get around the world here on am.pm. We're not about to go to America, but Mark is joined by some guests in the REL to discuss the US midterm elections.
Thank you, Carl. Well, I'm joined by the editor of UK Progressive magazine, Denis Campbell, and the Lib Dem AM, Peter Black. Denis, some of us here don't know too much about the American political system. What are the midterm elections? They're about controlling the Congress, I gather, the law-making institutions.
Well, every 2 years, the entire 435 members of the US House of Representatives come up for re-election. That's opposed to the members of the lower chamber of the House of Commons here, which is every 4 or 5 years, depending on whether there's a lack of confidence. And then 1/3 of the Senate, which is the upper chamber, comes up for election as well, because they serve 6-year terms.
And the Republicans have done very well last night in influencing these lawmaking bodies. That makes things difficult for a Democrat president, President Obama.
Well, he didn't exactly have a cakewalk before because he had a lot of internecine warfare inside of his own party. But going from 59 seats to 53 seats in a body where you need 60 seats or 60 votes in order to move any piece of legislation to the floor doesn't make it easier. On the House side, the damage is even more telling because they've lost almost 60 seats. So it's a complete switch of control over from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party.
Peter Black, do you think this will make a difference to how President Obama acts on the world stage? Will it affect us here in Britain?
Well, I mean, foreign policy, as I understand it, is largely the reserve of the President, and the Senate has quite an influence in that as well. So the Democrats are still in charge there. I mean, clearly there may well be a move towards protectionism in the United States, which will have an impact on trade, but whether Obama allows that to go that far or not is another matter. I think that the main problem for Obama is actually going to be in domestic terms. But of course, he now has 2 years where he can campaign against Congress and secure re-election. I think, in a sense, this isn't such a bad deal for him after all.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think he's got a much easier task now because he doesn't have to spend all of his time and effort trying to convince a few members of the Republican Party to come over to his way of thinking. He can now basically look back at the Republican-controlled House of Representatives and say, okay, you wanted control, you've got it, now you fix it, you broke it. Because for the past 2 years, all we've heard from the Republicans from the moment he was elected was that it's now Obama's economy, it's Obama's war, regardless of the fact that the last 8 years before he was elected were under the control of the Republicans, and they're the ones that created the mess in the first place.
In the short term, though, doesn't it make it difficult for him to get the programs and policies he wants through?
He had incredible difficulty from the very beginning. I mean, trying to get healthcare through, trying to get all of these other programs through. It was a monumental effort, and he's a compromiser by nature. He wants to try and find a middle ground, and unfortunately, the political environment in the States right now is so terribly poisonous that there is no middle ground. And even Republicans that have said they might turn around and try to compromise and work with this president have been threatened by none other than Sarah Palin. And Sarah Palin is the prohibitive favorite at this point to be the Republican nominee in 2012. So it is a very divisive and very hostile environment.
Peter Black, we're hearing a lot over here about the Tea Party. I know some people aren't aware of what that means, but characterise it for us if you would. A lot of the people supported by the Tea Party have done well last night. That's going to have an influence on the Republican Party.
Well, I mean, from my understanding, the Tea Party basically are a bunch of right-wing nutters who've gone...
They're not here to defend themselves, Peter
Black. They've gone for the populist vote. I mean, it just has there's an opinion poll earlier this year where 24% of Republicans thought Obama was the Antichrist. And that's just underlines the sort of atmosphere in American politics at the moment. It is very much polarised. As Denis said, no middle ground. And to be honest, the Democrats have been their own worst enemy. They had a majority in Congress, a majority in the Senate. They had the presidency, and they couldn't get their legislation through. And now, the opportunity they had to introduce radical reforms has gone. And the Republicans are going to act as a bloc, and they're going to be working towards the presidency by trying to even more partisan politics.
And yet, in spite of it, it has been a tremendous legislative agenda over the last 2 years. He's probably been the most productive Congress and president, and what he's done is he's focused on larger policy issues, which is typically what happens. Back in 1964, the midterms back then, it was a similar result for then President Lyndon Johnson. He had control of all three. He had control of both parties as well as the presidency. And when presidents have that opportunity, they tend to go for very, very big policy initiatives as opposed to the politically expedient, what's going to get me re-elected or help me in the midterms.
Just very quickly, does it make it more likely or not, last night's results, that Mr. Obama will be re-elected as president?
Well, I think he's in the same situation as President Reagan was. He's got a situation where his numbers are much better. He's got a crazed Congress, and I think in a certain amount of time he's going to find himself in a very, very strong position to be able to campaign both against Congress and move forward.
Peter Black, 10 seconds.
Obama will now go to the centre and he'll get re-elected.
Okay, well, we'll wait and see. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.